Hello and welcome to English for You. I'm Reese.
I'm Jonathan.
And we're here together to discuss an article called Truly Alone, Japan's Hikikomori. Have you heard of this word before, Jonathan?
Yes, actually, I met a guy who was a real Hikikomori in Kaohsiung. He stayed in his apartment for 2 years.
Wow. And did he self-describe as a Hikikomori? Or
Yes.
He does?
Yes.
So it's kind of like a name people might give to themselves.
Yeah, to describe the situation they are in, or in his case was in.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, he got out of it. He taught himself to play keyboards while he was in isolation, and now he's part owner and running a coffee shop.
Wow, so he's done
Tokyo.
pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess all of us had an experience of being a kind of hikikomori over the lockdown periods of COVID, right?
Yes.
I guess we should probably talk about what hikikomori is. It's basically being socially isolated, right?
Yeah. Basically, it's to describe a situation where a person will just kind of pull away from society and lock themselves in their apartment and either not come out or not interact with anybody and just try to be as alone as possible.
Yeah, that can have some pretty serious effects on your mental and physical health as well, as we'll discover in the article. So let's jump into it and read about hikikomori.
Reading. Truly Alone, Japan's Hikikomori. Haruto spends nearly all his time in his apartment. He has no friends and no job. Haruto is a hikikomori. The fact that Japan has over 1 million hikikomori is a problem. They stay alone in their home for at least 6 months. Even if they manage to get outside, they don't interact with people. They are cut off from meaningful social relationships. They have trouble meeting and speaking with people or taking care of themselves. Because they can't handle social communication, school or work is impossible. The term hikikomori, meaning pulling inward, was coined in 1998 by Professor Saito Tamaki, a doctor who noticed many young people behaving this way. Major experiences of shame and loss are commonly reported as causes of hikikomori. These could be such things as failing major exams or not getting an important job. Japan's cultural value system may make this situation more likely. This is due to pressure for everyone to behave the same way and the fear of social shame. Hikikomori choose to not follow the normal path set out for them by society.
Okay, so today's article begins with Haruto spends nearly all his time in his apartment. He has no friends and no job. Haruto is a hikikomori. So we've already talked briefly about what a hikikomori is, and I'm assuming Haruto, by his name, is probably a Japanese person.
Yes.
As hikikomori is also a Japanese word. I'm assuming because this phenomenon, this thing, is pretty common in Japan, maybe more than other places.
That's right. In fact, the article says, the fact that Japan has over 1 million hikikomori is a problem. They stay alone in their home for at least 6 months. Even if they manage to get outside, they don't interact with people. So in this case, to interact means to deal with someone directly. If I want to buy something at a store, for example, I need to interact with the person working at the store so I can give them what I want to buy and give them the money. Now, these days they're moving away from that. For example, at McDonald's, they have those machines. You can go in, you can order your food and pay for it on the machine and not have to interact with any person. But, so...
I don't like those machines.
Yeah.
If there's the option of a human or a machine to take my order, I'll always choose the human.
Yeah, exactly.
I like to have that interaction, which is the noun form of interact. I like to be able to speak to somebody real. Yeah. But it seems like we're going the way of automation, which is the process of giving humans jobs to robots.
That's right, yes.
Yeah. There are supermarkets in the UK now where there are no human staff. They kind of calculate the things that you're buying by using cameras and sensors and so on.
Oh, yes.
So you never have to interact with a human being.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like this system. Well, back to the article, and another consequence of Hikikomori is that they are cut off from meaningful social relationships. And by they, we're talking about the people who identify as Hikikomori. So let's talk about this word meaningful here. Meaningful is an adjective, and if something is described as meaningful, it is full of meaning. It has meaning. Something described as meaningful is probably important, serious, and worth paying attention to. A meaningful relationship is a relationship you have with somebody that's important and deep. Not just a stranger in the street, but perhaps a sibling or a parent or a lover. These are meaningful relationships. A meaningful story is a story that has important things to teach us or talks about real-life problems. Here's an example sentence with meaningful. I had a meaningful conversation with my friends about their religious beliefs.
Yes, so the article goes on to say, they have trouble meeting and speaking with people or taking care of themselves. Because they can't handle social communication, school or work is impossible. So communication could be talking, emailing, text messages, even music and pictures, anything that sends a message or idea to another person. In the article, they talk about social communication. So, for example, when you meet your friends and you say something like, hey, nice to see you. How was your weekend? Oh, yeah, was it fun? This is typical social communication, and Hikikomori just can't handle that kind of thing. Can you imagine trying to get a job and you're just not able to really talk to anybody? It's just not something that's going to happen.
It's definitely something that we take for granted, right? Communicating with each other for most people seems like a normal, easy thing to do.
Yeah.
But for some people, like Hikikomori, it can really be stressful and gives them anxiety, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, communication is what I studied at university, and studying it made me realize that actually most people, or at least many people, are not great at communication. Sometimes we don't listen to each other very well. We just want to talk about ourselves, or we just find it hard to connect with people.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something to be aware of, is communication.
Yes, very important.
We also saw the word impossible. It said that school or work is impossible for these people because they can't communicate well. Impossible is an adjective that means it cannot be done. If something is impossible, it cannot exist, happen, or be done. It's impossible, for example, for humans to breathe underwater without special equipment. It's also impossible for humans to fly in the sky without an airplane or a helicopter. Well, back to the article, it continues with, the term hikikomori, meaning pulling inward, was coined in 1998 by Professor Saito Tamaki, a doctor who noticed many young people behaving this way. The article used the word inward here. Hikikomori translates to pulling inward. Inward is an adverb, which is the opposite of outward. If something is coming or moving inward, it is moving from the outside to the inside. Its direction is inward, toward the middle.
And the article talks about the term coined. So coin is a verb that you can use to make a new word or phrase. This Japanese professor made up the word hikikomori to describe the way many young people were behaving. Phrases can be coined too. Steve Jobs, who was co-founder of Apple, once coined the phrase, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life."
Very good advice. Very good advice. One of my favorite words, kind of modern words, I guess, would be the word meme. M-E-M-E.
Yes.
And that was coined by Richard Dawkins, I think.
Oh, okay.
In one of his books. Yeah, an interesting word, coin. Not the money, but making a new phrase or word.
Yeah.
We also saw the word professor. Professor is a noun, and a professor is a teacher at a university or college. To be a professor, you have to be very smart and qualified. Usually, you need to have a PhD, which is a special kind of educational qualification that takes a very long time to get. Professors often do research in their particular subject of study at the same time that they're teaching at universities. So professors are really at the forefront of their subject.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing the science or the subject forward. You can be a professor in any subject. You could be a professor of science, of music, English, or history, whatever you like.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example sentence. I will meet with my professor tomorrow morning to discuss my final paper.
All right. The article goes on to say, major experiences of shame and loss are commonly reported as causes of hikikomori. So, shame. I'll try to explain that. When you feel shame, you feel a loss of respect for yourself. You might feel shame because of something you did. Maybe you said something mean, or maybe you did something bad that hurt someone. Maybe you feel shame for something you weren't able to do. Maybe you failed an important test, or maybe you tried out for a sports team and didn't get selected. These are things that might make you feel shame. So for the example sentence, Susan got into a fight with Jill and said some very terrible things to her. Later, Susan felt shame about what she did and said sorry to Jill.
Well, at least she said sorry.
Yes, yes.
Might sound funny, but shame is actually a really kind of useful emotion for us to feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when we're kids, we don't always know what's right and what's wrong. And our parents can teach us those things, of course, but shame also acts as a teacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you feel shame, it's because you know that you've done something bad or you've done something wrong or done something that maybe hurt somebody else.
Yeah.
So that shame kind of teaches you not to do those bad things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like that feeling of shame, though.
No. Yeah, it's a terrible feeling.
It does feel bad, yeah. Well, back to the article, it says these could be such things as failing major exams or not getting an important job. Japan's cultural value system may make this situation more likely. Well, I guess if you have a deeper understanding of Japan, if you've maybe lived there for a while or you've studied it, you might be more familiar with Japan's cultural value system, which is very, very particular to Japan. Before we discuss that, let's talk about this word cultural. Cultural is an adjective and it means to do with culture, about culture. So relating to the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a society. Cultural values are things that people believe or do in a particular culture or society. For example, a cultural value in Taiwan is the idea that we should respect our elders. People even send money to their parents when they're old, whereas in the West, that sounds like a very kind of foreign idea. In the West, we don't really have that particular cultural value, we have other cultural values. For example, liberalism, the idea that individual rights are more important than the group's rights. We really value our independence in the West, whereas my experience in Taiwan is that everyone does things for the greater good. Here's an example sentence with cultural. At the event on Sunday, you can take part in many cultural activities from different Aboriginal groups, such as basket making.
Yeah, I think that in Japan, like, because I used to live in Tokyo.
I was going to say, you pronounce Hikikomori very well.
Thank you. I lived there for a while, and I feel like their cultural system, they like to have a certain way to do things. You know, you go to high school, you get a good score, then you go to university, you get your degree, and then you try to get a good job in a good company, and then you work there for 20, 25 years, and then you retire. And I feel like there's a lot of pressure for Japanese to conform to that standard or that system. And if you fall outside of that area, it can become it can be difficult to find your place in society if you don't adhere to that system. And so I think that sometimes with hikikomori, that's what happens, is that maybe they don't get the degree or they can't get a good job at a good company, and then they just don't know what to do from that point forward.
Yeah, it's very interesting. From what I know of Japan, I've only been there once on a 3-week vacation, but it does seem like a place with a lot of rules, you know, and a lot of social expectation as to how you should or should not behave, for example, in public.
Yes.
Whereas, maybe in the West or other countries, you can kind of do what you want and other people won't care, or you don't care about what other people think about you. I think Taiwan is kind of a good medium, right?
Yeah.
In Taiwan, when you're in public, for example, on the metro, it's expected that you don't talk on your phone or eat or drink. That's respectful, right? But the rules aren't so strict that you feel that constant pressure of people watching you.
Yeah.
Japan has a bit of that.
Yeah, and I find it in the West, there's a certain admiration for people who find their own path, and find their own way to their own success or what makes them feel successful. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I'm almost 30 years old, and I'm still in university doing my undergraduate degree. When I tell people that in Taiwan, they're very surprised because here and in Japan, I think it's common that as soon as you finish high school, you do university.
Yes.
Whereas I took almost 10 years off
before
I did my university degree, which is becoming more and more common in the West, but still quite unusual, I think, in Taiwan.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, another word we used was situation. Situation is a noun. Your situation is your circumstances or how things are for you right now. For example, when COVID-19 became a problem, most people started working from home and talking to each other online. It took a while for everybody to get used to the new working situation. In the case of the article, Hikikomori have an unusual life situation because they're staying at home, they aren't working, and they aren't talking with other people. Speaking of the article, it goes on to say, this is due to pressure for everyone to behave the same way, and the fear of social shame. Hikikomori choose to not follow the normal path set out for them by society.
So I guess, in a way, that it's a good thing that they're not sticking to a system that they don't feel a part of. But the results of being a hikikomori are pretty bad, right?
Yeah. It's just a situation where, usually they're living with their parents, or with some family member or whatnot, and nobody really knows how to get out of it or how to resolve the situation. So,
what do you think would be a good solution for somebody trying to escape being a hikikomori?
I think, well, in the case of Yuta, the guy I met in Kaohsiung, he was able to do some traveling. He actually went to Canada on a working holiday visa and worked in a coffee shop for several months, and that sort of really forced him to sort of break out of his shell. So then when he came back to Japan, he could do other things. I think for him, not everybody would have this option, but for him, living in Canada and being around a completely different cultural value system and, interacting with people from, in Toronto, you meet people from all over the world. So I think that sort of helped give him a different sense of perspective of what is important to him, what he values, and what he should pursue in life. And now in the coffee shop he works at, some of his friends built it. Like they actually, like cutting wood and hammer and nails and everything. I saw the whole pictures on social media. And so it's his space. They play music there because, he plays the keyboard. He really likes the music. And that was his path out. But I think it's hard to say this is the way out for everybody because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah. Some people might not have the resources to maybe go to Canada, in which case, I think it really comes down to motivating yourself to move out of your comfort zone and maybe go out and meet some friends or maybe you could start easy and start finding social groups on the internet, which maybe you could then transition into real life, for example.
Yeah.
If you have any friends that are hikikomori, maybe you can invite them out for a coffee one day and get them out of their basement.
Yes.
Well, that's all for the article about hikikomori. Let's go over to our For You chat question to continue the conversation.
For You chat.
Okay, our chat question today is, you have to spend every day inside your room. what do you do?
What do I do? Well, during COVID, a lot of people have been quarantining or socially distancing. I never left Taiwan during this period, so I never had to do the quarantine. But, I have spent a few days at home alone. Luckily, my apartment is nice and big and bright, and I have 2 cats, so they can keep me company. If I was to spend the whole day alone, which sometimes I need to recharge, I'll play a lot of video games. Yeah, I have my Nintendo Switch. I'll play some online games, maybe take a bath, play with my cat for a while. I'll definitely be taking a nap. Maybe check out Netflix, see if there's any new show that I've missed out on. Or, catch up with some of the people that I haven't seen in a few years. I've lived in many different countries. So connecting with old friends from Beijing or from the UK, it'd be a good time to have a FaceTime and see how they're getting on as well.
Yes, yeah.
What do you think? What would you do?
Yeah, I think everything you said sounds good. I also love to play the video games, and I also have cats, and I have dogs. So
Wow, they get along?
Yes, we're all a big happy family there. So that's good. And I also like to do a lot of music at home. I have guitars and synthesizers, so I have plenty of stuff to keep me entertained. Although I do think that, after more than a day or so, I think I would really start to feel what we call cabin fever, where I would, really start to get like I just have to get outside. And even if I'm just outside, just observing people, I love to be out, and hear the traffic and see the lights of the city and whatnot. So I think I would start to get a little bit crazy if I had to stay in my apartment for more than a couple of days.
Yeah, I'm the same, I think. It's, humans are social animals, and so too much time without interaction with other humans is pretty bad for our mental health.
Yes.
So make sure you're not staying at home too much with your video games. And
That's right. If you want to play video games, call your friend to come over and you can play them together.
Play them together, exactly. Well, that's all we have for today. You guys can think about this question too. If you had a day to yourself inside your room, how would you spend it? What would you do? You can talk about that with your friends. But for now, we'll say goodbye from Reese and Jonathan. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Meaningful. For many people, raising a child is a meaningful experience. Coin. Walt Disney coined the term plussing as a way of making a good idea even better. Professor. Music history was a really fun university course, and the professor taught us a lot. Shame. Martina feels a great deal of shame about the bad mistakes and choices she's made in the past. Cultural. The 2 countries share a cultural history that connects their beliefs and traditions. Situation. My parents often fight with each other, so it's a difficult situation at home.
智慧小补帖
Interact. Communication. Inward.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net